Thank you so much for being here. Really excited to kick this off. This is session 2 of the Common App Bootcamp. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be on personal statements. Your amazing instructor is Annabella. She's a coach from our platform. She's an expert admissions consultant. We are also hosted by Daphne. She is also a college admissions coach on the platform. Both have excellent experience and expertise to offer you, so I'm really excited for you guys to learn from them. A couple quick reminders. This session will be recorded for those of you who can't make it or have to drop halfway through. The session will be recorded and it will be emailed out 24 hours after the session. So you should be getting this email to you tomorrow. And then please just go ahead and check the course syllabus for all details on homework and assignments. We will also be sending reminders about those via email. And I will pass it off to Daphne to say a quick hello, and then we will go ahead and get started.
Hi, everyone. So excited to be here. As a reminder, I will be here every week, so we'll be fielding questions and such, but excited to be with you all here today. With that, I will pass it off to Annabella to get us started.
Hi, everyone. Well, happy Labor Day week, beginning of September. I think I just want to begin with some gratitude for all of you that are here, that you're embarking on this journey. You're trying to learn from this. This is a really, really exciting journey. And feel free to chime in, take notes. I always like to make myself available so we can always schedule a complimentary call. This is what I'm really passionate about, the component of the essay writing. So I will be sharing some details and we'll go from there. So this is about crafting a really, really well-made personal statement. It's typically the main essay on your Common App. And I do understand that there are some platforms such as Georgetown, for instance, or anything like that, they might ask for like a regular essay. So this could also be applicable to other types of like UC prompts, Common App essay type of approach. So don't feel that we're just focusing on Common App. It will be the main emphasis, but you can definitely apply to this. So this is a very exciting time. I would say that the essay, it's such an important component. It could even like make it or break the application. Most of the other components, such as like your GPA, your SAT, a lot of those are quantitative. So your Common App essay is one of the qualitative components where we could really say, here's your voice. This is what you have to share. That's the idea. And what I always want to like tell you a little bit about is the so what factor. Like, what is the purpose? Why are you telling this whole story so that you can really understand what you're talking about? I'm going to give you a real example. I'm going to be authentic here. I'm just going to, like, I'm talking to you as if you're all my best friends, and I can talk really, really like confidently with you all. So, I've been a college counselor for over 20 years, and I really, really love what I do. And what I decided to do last year was I decided to go back to school. And I said, everything that I've been training my students, I'm going to put into action on myself because easier said than done, right? So I decided to apply to Harvard, Columbia, and Penn for master's degrees. And it came at the time where I had to do a main essay. So I was like, what am I going to talk about myself? Like, they really want to get to know who I am. What should I say? So, and remember, one thing that we should always take into consideration is we don't want to like just tell something, we really want to show the show don't tell component, right? So in my personal experience, what I did is I think something that's really important in my life is that I'm multicultural. But if I say I'm diverse, I'm multicultural, it just sounds boring. That's a reality. So my essay was that, and I got into the three schools, by the way. So my essay was about a culinary journey to my home and how I could exemplify that. So if you come to my house on a Friday night, it is your well, first of all, my three dogs are going to be barking. I name my dogs after desserts. So, for example, I have a dachshund called Eclair or another dog called Tiramisu. Then, while we're eating, we might have lomo saltado because my father's Peruvian. I was born and raised in Caracas, Venezuela. But I've lived in the US. Well, my mother's Italian, so we would have tiramisu for dessert. I've lived in the US for over 20 years. So we probably might not be eating at 9 p.m. Probably will be eating around 7:15 p.m. I also have a neurodiverse child. So if my child speaks to you, that's like a really huge accomplishment for me because he used to have selective mutism in the past. So, and within that essay, by the way, I'm really depicting like the softness of the tiramisu that you are able to eat, and kind of like all the odors and everything, the aromas emanating from the kitchen. So you see how with that, I'm not just telling you I'm from this place, this place, this place, but I'm really like inviting you to my home. And you can almost feel as if you have a seat at the table. By the way, you're all invited whenever you want. You feel like you have a seat at the table. You can already imagine the types of flavors, and you can get to know who I am through that type of essay. So I just wanted to start off with that type of component so that you can really see what I'm talking about here. So this is what we're going to be covering. First of all, it's going to be, what is the purpose of the Common App essay? So what admissions officers really want? And by the way, this presentation, what I want to do is, I don't just want to be like reading off aloud. So I'm going to be chiming in, telling you some experiences, some ideas, and going from there. So we really need to showcase who you are through an interesting component. And I've had hundreds and hundreds of students, and many times I have students that tell me, Annabella, my life is uneventful. Thank God I haven't had a tragedy. I haven't had anything too crazy. What should I talk about? And the answer is, it doesn't have to be something super extreme. Just like I showed with my presentation, with my essay, I'm just talking about things that we're having for dinner. It's not something that's life-changing. Sometimes some students do have a particular story, and that's okay. But other students may not, and that's perfectly fine too. Another component is really understanding the prompts. So why the prompt matters more than your story. What will you be choosing and what's going on? So, and that's something that what I always recommend, you see how like whenever we have like the 7 Common App prompts, for example, one is asking you, what is a meaningful extracurricular activity? What is something that's important to you? What is something that you're grateful for? Talk about an obstacle, talk about something that you're interested in your life, or the last one could be like a free write. So the idea behind this is, whatever you choose, you're doing it with an intent to really showcase who you are. So I'm going to give you another example because sometimes these things may sound a little bit. So one of the prompts is, talk about something that you're interested in. I'm just summarizing in a nutshell what it's about, right? So my grandfather, he was Italian, and he was a doctor, but he got Alzheimer's disease. If you see me, look, I'm actually drinking green tea. This is my mug from Colombia that says where true change begins. I'm constantly drinking water, and so on and so forth. I'm really fascinated about neurological health and ways that we could really biohack or improve our brain performance, right? So I'm not just going to talk about the benefits of blueberries, which I actually had for breakfast this morning, or whatever, but I'm talking more about like my relationship with my grandfather and how that came to, for me to have like this fascination about Alzheimer's disease and the brain. Maybe I'm not going to study that, but you see how with that, they get to understand the concepts of family values and so on and so forth. Then besides that, so we can really brainstorm. We can think about experiences that we want to share. We can provide feedback. Sometimes just asking like a close family member, a friend, like, okay, so how would you depict who I am? What's an example of an experience? Or maybe even showing a text and then saying, does this really show who I am? And then another test is showing a complete stranger or somebody that doesn't really know your life, like, okay, so what do you think about this? Are you intrigued by this, or kind of like, does this showcases? Then crafting your narrative. It's super important the way it's written. So the structure, what we try to avoid is we're also looking into aesthetics. So what that means is we don't really want chunky, clunky paragraphs. Imagine that you were like receive a document and it's like so many paragraphs. It's just like, ugh. So, but here, so this isn't your English high school essay where you have to have like an intro, 3 supportive paragraphs, and a conclusion. You can even create like a hook, maybe like a 2-sentence paragraph, dialogue, and so on and so forth. I've had students in the past that they write a letter to something specific. So you see how like just making something that's like that will really, really leave a mark. I think that's something that matters. Then revision. I used to be the type of person that I was like, okay, I wrote the essay, I'm done with it, I'm over it. But it's really important to polish it, cut filler words or phrases, and really get the words across. I used to have a teacher that said, like, words are like diamonds. Like, we don't just want to be like reiterating something. We really, really want to showcase what we want to say. And then with that, like, I always encourage for you to have like a writing practice. I know nowadays we live in a day and age where we have so many distractions, but if you can, maybe just um, put on an alarm, give yourself like a 10-minute free write or anything like that. That's the idea. And then a Q&A and a wrap up. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have and anything that you may need. So that's the idea here. Then I wanted to give you a little bit of information about who I am and where I come from and things that matter to me. So I have a master's in education leadership from Penn. I really enjoyed this because I really understood like, okay, what's the importance about how to like basically like one of the sides to education. What are colleges looking for? My thesis, my dissertation was on college course selection. So what that means is, are AP courses better than advanced courses, honors courses? How should we really showcase this so that we can it can work? Then Columbia University, nowadays I've had students with autism, ADD, ADHD, blah blah. So there's so many components. I really like to meet students where they're at and further support them. Extensive experience. I really, really, I love what I do, and I like to grow. I like to take courses, help students, and really show up for them. And I would say that my expertise is based on the essay components, whether it's a supplement, whether it's a Common Apps. This is something that I'm really, really grateful for. I have, and I'm really grateful for this community. I have wonderful reviews, and you can always reach out to me. So in terms of like free work and take home assignments. So in the chat, you can share one thing you learned from each of the assignments. One thing that whenever I'm thinking about in terms of this is like, what have I learned about myself? Have I realized what kind of person I am or things like that? So you can, and by the way, you can always include things that you want to add here in the chat or anything that you've learned in this process. So you can definitely include it here. So I'm just gonna give you like a minute or so if you want to add anything here. And then I'm gonna like also pinpoint some components from the meeting chat. Okay, so I love the fact that learning the free write prompt. I'm grateful that you're mentioning that because it's something that's like so useful. Many times we might say, I have no idea what I'm going to talk about. I don't know anything about my life. I don't know if this would even matter and things like that. But then maybe like giving voice to it, and then it's like, okay, it does make sense, or maybe this was just a free write and it was just therapeutic, or maybe there's something in here. That's why. Then little components that I'm just gonna like touch upon on the chat, but I know there's gonna be like a Q&A session, is learning about a passion that can lead you to writing an essay for a college topic. Absolutely. I think this is one of the most important components. So keep in mind that an essay, it doesn't have to be career oriented. It's not the typical essay, such as a supplement that you're saying like, oh, and because of this, I've been doing this, and because of this, this is what I want to major in. Sometimes I've had students that, yes, it's part of it, like inevitably. Maybe you're talking about something, maybe you're talking about one time when you shadowed a specific, regardless of like whatever industry you're talking about, and how that sparked your interest in that major. It could be that, but it doesn't necessarily have to be about that. It could just be about a passion about something. And being vulnerable. Remember, like, imagine, I always like to tell this to my students. A lot of colleges, well, all colleges actually, they're reading a crazy amount of essays. Imagine if you're the essay that's being read at 4:45 p.m. on a Friday. You don't want to just make excuses and be like, okay, whatever, they're just going to get bored, they're exhausted. No, you really want this essay to stand out. You want to have a great hook. You want to be authentic. You want to be vulnerable, if that's the case, where it's almost as if you're talking to your best friend, to your diary, that the person really, really wants to continue reading this. It's kind of like, imagine if, so a lot of my students like to watch things on Netflix. And imagine like if you just look at the preview of something and then you're like, wow, okay, I really want to watch that. But at the same time, we don't want sob stories. So what that means is, imagine if I'm recommending a show, and if I were to tell you, like, you're going to get really depressed by it, it's going to be super sad. Sometimes some people like to watch those types of shows, but not everybody. So because of that, also think about your audience. You don't want them to just end up like so devastated or anything like that. It's just more about like a natural flow. It's like an invitation. You're opening up your doors, your windows, whatever analogy you want to use, to your world. That's why. So, and it's totally fine to use an example in your personal statement that isn't one of your big extracurriculars. You could talk about something that showcases your growth. That's perfectly fine. That's something that's crucial as well. And besides that as well, I really liked one of the comments that says, like, if you're making the admissions officer not go to sleep, it could be a thing in your application that stands out. Imagine, so always remind yourself, imagine if it's 4:45 on a Friday afternoon, admissions officers are exhausted, they've read countless numbers of essays. They wanted to be like, yes, that's the essay that we're looking for. We really, really like this. I'm thinking of tangible experiences, things that really, so remember, it could be as something mundane, as something day to day, something small, such as like things that you're eating on the daily component, or it could just be something that like a one-time thing that occurred. You might have to showcase some activities, but remember, your essay is not a summation of your resume or a summation of your common activities. You don't want paragraphs and paragraphs saying, as the president of so and so, and as this and this. We don't want to see that, because that would be filler. That would be repetitive. And you can really show growth with that. So that's something that's interesting. And with that, you can understand what colleges are really, really looking for. So I'm just looking over if there's anything else. So if you use a phrase that is probably used in other works that are published, is that cheating or plagiarizing? So one note on that, I recommend, I don't always like to say generalizations like always, never, but try to avoid using a particular quote, such as like if you get an essay quote Benjamin Franklin, because that is something that's very outdated and people nowadays don't really use it. And you don't want to just talk about something else. This is an essay about yourself. And if you're using, you could totally use a phrase like, my dad always instilled in me the concept of carpe diem. It's important, seize the day, blah, blah. So, and then with that, but if you feel like maybe you're taking something from that, reconsider if it's like a specific type of quote. It's crucial. And then with that, you can see if this is a really good representation. And another thing before I go to the next slide, will colleges know whether you're lying or not? So I mean, if I'm talking about like the foods I eat in my essay, for example, nobody's gonna come knocking on my door and really say like, are you eating an arepa for dinner and tiramisu for dessert? That's not something bad. But at the same time, so I could kind of like stretch it a little bit. I might not eat Peruvian and a Venezuelan food and an Italian food all at the same time, but it's a representation. But of course, if you're talking about something a lot bigger, maybe a tragedy, maybe something like that, just make sure that you don't over stress it. I think, and also if you put yourself into a college counselor's shoes. So now I'm gonna kind of like take you on a trip here. Two components here that I just want to tell you. So one thing is, imagine about like if you're a parent and a child is telling you something and you're like, I know that is not true. So try not to say something that may just sound a little bit too much of a stretch, that it's just way too much. And I had a student a few years ago that spoke about like winning the soccer competition, and he had like X amount of trophies, and they're all displayed in this coffee shop. And he was speaking so much about it, and I really asked him, I was like, "Is this true? Because I don't really visualize this." And he said, "No, it's not true. I just thought that colleges are looking for like this positive reinforcement and all of this, that I'm doing these recognitions. So we just have to take this into consideration." And my other analogy that I wanted to tell you is about taking a trip. Imagine that you're going on a trip wherever you want, and you're kind of choosing a group of people to go with you. Maybe one person might say, "Hey, you know what? I am really, actually, I'm really bad at doing this, but let's just pretend. I need to work on booking flights and hotels. I don't know why. I just get stressed. I want to make sure the dates are correct." So if I have somebody on my travel team that will tell me, "Hey, Annabelle, I'm really good about organizing dates, organizing Airbnbs, hotels, restaurant reservations," I'll probably be like, "Yes, I really want you to travel with me because that's going to be great." Maybe another person will say, "You know what? I love history. I can book all the museums, and I'm going to talk to you about history, about art, and I'm going to tell you all about these things," right? Um, so I'll probably be like, "Hey, I really want you on my trip." And then maybe somebody else will be like, "Hey, I'm a foodie. I'm gonna research what are the best restaurants." And then with that, like everybody has something to contribute. Not everybody has the same. Not everybody's gonna be booking the same restaurants or booking restaurants. Everybody has a role. So same thing here. Each student has something to contribute to the school, and what we want admissions officers to feel like, "I really want you in this college." Maybe you're passionate about helping neurodiverse students. Maybe somebody else is really passionate about their really real leadership roles. Or maybe somebody is so multicultural that you're like, "I really just want you on campus because you're really going to help out with this multicultural problem," or whatever. So all of these little details are so crucial. So think about it like, will I be invited on this trip because I have like this really weird or authentic angle? So take that into consideration. Then so goals for today. First, we're going to understand what the Common App essay is really about. If there's one thing that we could take away from this is everyone is known and needed. Everyone has a story, and through storytelling, we could really understand who the person is, what the person is about, and ultimately they confer how they can contribute to the college. I know that there are a lot of supplements where they might say, "How will you contribute to so and so?" But here as well, remember, you have a story. Nothing is too small. You don't need to have something crazy eventful in your life so that it could be worthwhile. It could be about your family. It could be about your career. It doesn't have to be about your career, but it could be something where you really are showing that you are known and needed and that so many other people are. Then strategies for brainstorming, writing, and revising. So remember, we can all get writer's block. If you're stuck, I'm happy to have a session with you. And at the same time, like, be very kind to yourself. This is kind of like as if we're working on a masterpiece, a piece of art. Maybe you have an idea in your head. Maybe you're saying, "I would like to draw a landscape." That's the idea. And then maybe you're gonna have a go on it. You have several drafts, but then it's also really important to revise it. I used to be the type of person that it was like one and done. I finished the essay. I never want to look at it again. But this is kind of like as if you are, let's say that you have like the piece of art with you and you're looking at it and you're like, "Okay, it's great. I like it." But then all of a sudden you're like, "Wow, I just realized I have 3 words repetitive in one paragraph and I think I could use better words for it. So something, so that act of revising is so crucial. It's pivotal. So that's something that I highly recommend. And another piece of advice, you might not be everybody's cup of tea in two components. Maybe a college might not feel it's the best fit, but you know what? They're doing you a favor. So sometimes rejection can be redirection. So maybe a college might not like your essay, but then another one will as well. So that's something that's important to take into consideration. And this also has to do with feedback. So you might ask a parent, you might ask a best friend, you might ask whomever, and one person may love your essay, another person may hate it. That's a reality. So you really have to make sure that you understand what it's about, that you can say, okay, this is a good representation of who I am. That's the idea. And then definitely always actively draft material you can use in your essay. So always go back to it, see what you can do, all these details that are crucial for that. Then, so what do colleges want to see? So the purpose of the Common App essay is for them to get to know you in a qualitative component. They want to see what works. So that's something that's it's important. Then what it is not. It's not a resume recap. It's not a generic statement. We're not here to impress everybody by just saying something that's very neutral. We don't want that. They're not interested in that. What it is, it's a reflection of your identity, kind of like the component that I said. And by the way, I spoke more like in my essay. I'm also like weaving in more components so that they could really understand who I am, where I come from. So it could be a reflection of your identity, whether it's multicultural, whether it's neurodiverse, whatever it is. Maybe it could be a reflection of growth, that you're saying, hey, I started here and look what happened. It could be a component of resilience. I have a student, I was speaking to her today. So she is a president of Morgan's Message. And one of the messages is that you can still be a human and you can still be an athlete. So it's kind of like normalizing the stigma between mental health and being an athlete. Or it could just be like having your voice, what it's about. Then key admissions officer's perspective as well, something like, can we picture the student on campus? So with that, what that means is, will the student really add value? Is this a good fit, not just for the student, but also for the school? So these are things that are important to take into consideration. Any polls or hand raises? What do you think admissions officers care most about in essays? So you can type something in the comments, anything you need, let me know. And I'm going to be like stating some comments that I noticed here. So there are there are always like one thing that I'm looking from the comments, and then I'll add my ideas on it, because I know sometimes some components might be confidential. That it's through this essay experience, like you can really get to know, it's like a whole thought process where you can really get to know what matters to you in life, or what are things that you learned in life that really shape who you are today. So I have a story that's aligned with what one of the students that mentioned to this. So I was giving a seminar, and I was actually at Penn, and I was kind of like in my coffee break while I was like during like the dissertation, and I was giving like a walking seminar. I had my AirPods on, and I had actually just ordered a matcha latte from Starbucks. And I actually, like, the students were hearing me ordering it, and it sounded funny, but then I was like, I really need to explain why I did this. And we don't realize how ingrained our family stories are here. So what happened was, so my mother is Italian, as I mentioned, and many times when I would get sick, she would tell me like, oh, you were walking around the house barefoot, or you used too much ice. You had ice in your water. Shame on you, and that's why you're sick. So I would always be like, as a child, like, no, that's ridiculous. And I went to an American school all my life, so it was very common to have cold drinks and so on and so forth. But in my house, I was always like, okay, fine, no, maybe, or I washed my hair without drying it. That was like sacrilege. And then I found myself ordering this matcha a cold one, but please, 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 no ice. So I realized, I'm like, I'm noticing how these stories are so, these things that are instilled in my life, they're so ingrained in me that I didn't realize it. So I know this sounds corny, but one thing that I always recommend is observe your life. Observe things that you eat, that you drink, how you order things, how you talk to people, because that could really shed light on who you really, really are. And it's a lot about like full circle storytelling. So maybe in the beginning, I would tell my mom, that is ridiculous. I washed my hair, I'm fine. I just got a cold because of XYZ, or I like using ice, blah, blah. But then I'm kind of realizing that maybe like the Italian culture is ingrained in my life. I'm very grateful for her because she was actually the one that instilled the value of education and all of that. So you see how we're connecting something deeper within ourselves. And we're being vulnerable, we're being authentic, we're showcasing our values, whether it's our family values, our growth. I like how so many people in this chat are talking about like authenticity, growth, values, your personality, your story, your character. And remember, it's also like in terms of like the tone. So I'm a type of person, I like to set like a good energy, a good vibe. So you see how I began with gratitude. So you can incorporate a little bit of humor, for example, if you're the type of person that you want this essay to be a little bit easier to read or whatever it is. And you also want to stay away from something that's like too extensive too. You don't want to go to something too far-fetched that somebody will not understand. Also, another rule of thumb that I also want to give you is sometimes we should be able, like a fifth grader should be able to read your essay and understand what you're talking about. But let's say that you're talking about a term such as Alzheimer's disease. A college professor should also be able to read it and understand. So it's not too basic, but it's not too extensive either. So it's both components here as well. So first of all is, I would say when we're talking about like the 7 Common App prompts is what we really have to talk about here, what we really, really need to think about is what is your voice? And sometimes what we can take into consideration, you can either begin making like a list of what it is that you're gonna like, what are things about your life that you want to talk about that might be important. So maybe you might not look at the prompts at the beginning. You might just say, okay, I might want to talk about my multiculturality, my passion for Alzheimer's disease. I might think like, oh, I did a study abroad in Florence, Italy. Did that impact my life? Yes, but a one-time thing is not so important. So the first prompt is, some students have a background, identity, interest, or talent that is so meaningful they believe their application would be incomplete without it. If this sounds like you, then please share your story. That's prompt number 1. So this is a typical type of prompt that is more for students that maybe like they're soccer players, they don't have much time on their hands and everything is revolving around soccer. Maybe they teach the little kids how to play soccer, they're in their varsity soccer and they're in a varsity clubs. Hannah, you have your hand up. If you want, you can chime in. What do you think?
Sorry, I actually had a question.
Yes, go ahead.
So I was wondering when you were talking about like the show Don't Tell, I was going under the approach like from my essay that I was gonna like explain the story that like happened to me and then taking like how I gained a value from it. And my value is like curiosity and like love of learning. And I wanted to like emphasize like what that means to me. But only like 20% is like me actually sharing my story. Because it is like more of a depressing one. So I was like, I want it to be more positive, but then I don't want like 400 words in my essay to be like just me telling about my values. So like, should I change it?
I would, and that's a really, really good question. I would add more about you because we don't just want to generalize things. And they ultimately want to get to know more about you. And another side note is try to avoid using the word you. Like, try to avoid, like, in life, you should always know because you have no idea who's reading the essay. So that's why just like make it more about you. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
But what if
So definitely.
oh sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
So, like mine, I was gonna like tell my story, which is I had like an incident where I had like brain damage, and my major
Mhm.
is gonna be neuroscience. So,
Oh,
it kind of made me pursue like I lost a lot of my IQ went lower, and I lost a lot about like my natural intelligence, and that made me really pursue like where I'm curious and where I'm passionate about. And I was gonna talk about like how curiosity and like leaning into like learnability are like values of mine, but I don't really
mhm.
I feel like that's telling more than showing, so I don't know, like, where I should shift that.
Okay, so then with that, like I would, and remember, like you could be authentic in terms of like your resilience. So you could really talk about maybe if there are things that we're assuming things, or maybe we have no idea what you're talking about. So try to include examples where we then might empathize or connect on a deeper level, that we could be like, oh, okay, I see what you're doing here. So I would really talk about maybe through this transition, maybe when you found out when this happened, or when somebody told you your IQ was lowered, how did you feel? What happened? Um, and if this is applicable, kind of like the so what component, but more about your life. Have you helped others in this journey? Are you trying to advocate for others? What have you been doing? Details like that, so that we can kind of like understand a little bit more like what your thought process is.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
But I would really, you're welcome. I would really, really dive in to like what it is that you want to relay, and your life story, so that we can really, so I just as an example, and hopefully this is going to help you with your essay. I had a student that she had a TBI, a traumatic brain injury. She was in a golf cart, but she was going, a friend of hers was going really, 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 really fast, and she actually had like early Alzheimer's at the age of 16. And the doctors were telling her that it could be very, very difficult for her um, to recall things. And then with that, like I remember, and actually I remember, like I've actually helped her since forever, and she's getting a master's, and it's super exciting. But
Mhm.
since then I've been inspired by her, because like I remember her essay was about, like, she's like, I'm the post-it girl. It's like wherever I'm I have a post-it on me. I have notes. I have an agenda, or I have like a notes app as well, that she's writing things down, not because she doesn't trust herself, but because of her condition. She just
Mhm.
wants to make the best of her life. So you see how like also like incorporating a little bit of humor, like, oh, I'm the post-it girls that have,
Yeah.
and me, I also have post-its, and I'm always thinking like, yes, I
Mhm.
do empathize with that, and that's something that matters. Um, another the second prompt says, the lessons we take from obstacles we encounter can be fundamental to later success. Recount a time when you faced a challenge, setback, or failure. How did it affect you, and what did you learn from the experience? So you see how here maybe that essay could be applicable to an obstacle, but at the same time we want it to have a positive tone. We don't want it to be draining. So that's why we don't always want to talk about a tragedy. If it's part of your life and you feel it's important, maybe we could analyze it, but we just don't want the essay to be too draining, or we don't want the reader to just feel like, oh, what am I going to do with this information? It's way too overwhelming. Prompt number 3 says, reflect on a time when you questioned or challenged a belief or idea. What prompted your thinking? What was the outcome? So by the way, this is one of the essays that a lot of colleges, this is one of the prompts that a lot of colleges have told me they don't really like that much, because when you're talking about questioning or challenging your idea, you have no idea who's reading it. So you don't want to be very controversial. You don't know what their religious, political stance. So I always recommend like trying to stay away from religion or politics. Obviously, if that's part of your identity, you could talk about it, but you don't want to say something like, oh, okay, the religious component, or I had a fight with my teacher and they gave me a bad grade, but then I finally moved it to an A, because they might wonder like, okay, well, what actually happened there? Now prompt number 4, they really, really like it because you see it has that positive outlook. Reflect on something that someone has done for you that has made you happy or thankful in a surprising way. How has this gratitude affected or motivated you? So you see how that, like, this is a lot about, like, just like I started the session, like gratitude. How has it made you happy or thankful? It could be something tangible, or it could be something where it's more like metaphorical, that something occurred. Question number 5, prompt 5. Discuss an event, an accomplishment, event, or realization that sparked a period of personal growth and a new understanding of yourself or others. Maybe it could be like a life story, a life lesson where you're saying, like, this is what happened, this is what I went through. But again, try to make it with a positive tone if possible. You don't need to sound fake. You don't need to be like, oh, and everybody lived happily ever after and life is good, because sometimes maybe that wasn't the point. But try to make it more of a reflection, like, okay, I'm at peace with it, I'm grateful. Question number 6. This is like the example of the Alzheimer's with my grandfather. Describe a topic, idea, or concept you find so engaging that it makes you lose all track of time. Why does it captivate you? What or who do you turn to when you want to learn more? So with that being said, remember, this is not an essay on blueberries or nuts or green tea or whatever. They want to get to know more about who you are. So if it's a story about your passion for Legos, for clean eating, or whatever it is, go for it. And number 7, the topic of your choice one, which is this one here, is share an essay on any topic of your choice. It can be one you've already written. By the way, that one I'm not too fond of, like the one you've already written, because you can either adapt it, or one that responds to a different prompt, or one of your own design. Or maybe you might say my essay is a combination of 1 and 3, and that's totally fine. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a breakout drill. So in pairs, if you can, share which prompts speak to you most and why. And if you're not sure about the prompt, you can just talk about like the topic of your essay. And then with that, then any volunteer can share back with a group. So we can work on the breakouts right now. Let's see if we can do the breakouts right now. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Daphne and Macy are going to do the breakout rooms. So let's see if that works.
All right, I just went ahead and created a breakout room, so everyone feel free to join yours. If you have any issues, feel free to shoot me a direct message.
Okay, so I think everybody's here. So if there are any volunteers that would like to share back with the group about maybe your story, an idea, or maybe something that you're thinking about, this is a safe space. So I'm happy to provide instant feedback of like what I think, or maybe that you can add or anything. So if there's anything that anybody would like to say. Yes, James.
Yeah, so I kind of talked about how none of the prompts really suited me in the way that I wanted them, so I just chose to write my own essay. And what I wanted to do was connect how, like, because I'm an economics major, I wanted to talk about how, like, my initial want to be an economics major was to, like, do a career that would make me rich, because I kind of grew up in not the best like financial situation, but I kind of changed my mind through these activities that I did and through helping my community. I changed my mind to wanting to help others through like politics and public policy.
Okay,
Mhm.
got it. I think that's a really good like life lesson and growth component, because you could really talk about maybe thinking of an anecdote of growing up, something where you're talking about maybe where maybe money was tight or what's going on, and then how you've kind of like overcome that thought process through your econ major. And maybe if you're like, you have your leadership of a club that has to do with econ or things like that, that it's like, okay, well, that shows your growth. You're kind of like getting out of that mindset that you grew up with. Amazing. Congratulations. Joaquin, what about you?
So for me, the prompt I chose was the describe a topic, idea, or concept you find so engaging that it makes you lose all track of time. The why does it captivate you? And for me, that's actually skincare, because there's just so much to it. And I think it really ties in with like the identity prompt I chose, which was big picture thinker, because it's, rather than focusing on the really finer details, it's focusing on how everything really ties in together, which is what I try to really reflect in my activities, with my clubs, really trying to aim the direction towards a bigger purpose, and then, delegating the much smaller tasks, similar to what I do with skincare as well.
Wonderful. I really like that, and I feel that people can really relate. Whatever you're talking about in terms of skincare, try to incorporate if you can, like a little bit of humor or something that they can really see what it is that you're talking about because there's so much. So, like for example, I had a student that she created a passion project, and the passion project is definitely something that we can touch upon in another session because it's like also super important. Because she went through like a lot of teenage acne. So like what and why skin hair really, really empowered her and helped her. The other day I had a session with a student and the session was actually like at 10 p.m. my time because so she lives in Texas. And I told her, I'm like, well, you know what? No judgment. If you see me wearing like a face mask or something, or like so many creams that I'm like all going because I love skincare. And right away she was like, oh, me too. You know, I have this is like my way of self-care. So I really think with that topic, so many people can really identify. So I think that would be great. What about you, Leonardo?
All right. Okay. Can you hear me now? Perfect.
Yes, I can hear you.
For me, I really gravitated towards the obstacles one because for me, I started my essay talking about an anecdote where my father has a tendency to go on these Saturday morning garage sale like runs and buy a bunch of things, claiming he found a new purpose for it and how because the like one Saturday he brought a video game and it was scratched and I ended up like going I ended up spiraling and coming to the consensus of using toothpaste to fix it and ended up working and how because of that I kind of became a problem solver and how one aspect of my identity kind of challenged that way of thinking and how I kind of found double meaning within the word no sé. Um, I don't know. No says I don't know in Spanish. So I found, double meaning within that word and how that ended up being the way I kind of um, repurposed my life and repurposed my identity into finding double meaning within all throughout my life.
I love that. So you see how like you could even begin, and they like it when you're incorporating a different language. They could feel like, okay, I found double meaning, two words, no sé, but it could be so deep that you're talking about your father and like these Saturday morning trips that he comes back, and maybe you might ask him like, what will this be useful for, or what did you bring here? And then maybe he'll say like no sé, and then you're thinking about like the word no sé and you're actually like repurposing it for a specific type of maybe you're fixing it with a toothpaste, things like that. I love that. I think that would be great. And you see how you could kind of like shed light on like your family dynamics or your relationship with your father or the way that you become a problem solver in the mundane stuff or even on the Saturday morning stuff that you're like, okay, what's gonna come up here? So that's great. What about you, Hannah? And then we'll go on to the next slide. Maybe you had your hand up from before. Hannah, would you like to share something?
Oh, sorry. I don't know why I thought you said a different name. Sorry.
No worries.
So I kind of touched on like what I was gonna write about, but basically I wanted to take where I was in severe carbon monoxide poisoning and that led to like a pretty severe brain injury. And I kind of wanted to take like I was always in the gifted program. I was always like very brilliant naturally. Oh, sorry. And my prompt, I forgot to mention that. The prompt that I wanted to go with was like the one about obstacles. And so when I lost kind of something that I relied on in myself, like which was my intelligence, I had to kind of lean into where am I curious? I had to like learn things and I had to and I really got this like love of learning and I wanted to like talk about that, but I don't really know if I should because I have like flashbacks because like even before carbon monoxide poisoning, when I was really little, I like in the focus group, which was like our school's gifted program, they brought a brain to school and I was like so fascinated with it. So I don't really know if I should like throw that in there as like a memory, but um I was like, I was gonna take like the story and like made it how that changed my perspective and gave me like a new lens on like learning and what learning meant to me and like being in pursuit of intelligence.
I would definitely add that, and you could even be creative, just like as an idea. Like you could even write a letter to your brain, like dear brain. You can be like off the bat, like dear brain, or you can even give her or it a nickname, and you can kind of like begin like, okay, you know, we've been together through thick and thin since day one. You were with me, but and then you can talk about like, okay, I actually learned more about you that time when I was handed a squishy version of you in fourth grade. I had endless questions. How does this work? And how do thought process work? And blah blah. But then came a time when, and then you talk about the carbon monoxide, and then you might be like, okay, I'm very grateful for you. And then you can talk about, like, in the end, it could be like a PS, and then you can incorporate something additional. Like, I wonder what comes next, or something you can incorporate humor or something additional. So I would definitely include that. I really like that. Because we really get to know who you are. So I love it.
Okay.
Awesome. So we had spoken about like the brainstorming strong topic. So a strong topic, as we saw here in this component, it's a lot about like, okay, what makes something strong is we can really get to know who you are. It shows reflection. It shows that you've really thought about it. Maybe you're incorporating words that have to do with your topic. So like, let's say if I am a music enthusiast, maybe I'm using words such as harmonious, orchestration, symphony, melody throughout the essay, where if somebody were to read it, they're like, oh, I see what she did here, that she's using the word tune or things like that. And try to avoid overused themes. Like, you don't want to talk about like the typical, I have so many students, I don't want to like sound mean or anything, but like, okay, they had an injury, and then how they overcame it, and then maybe they got bad grades, and then their coach called them, and then things got better. You don't want to talk about a one-time thing like, oh, last summer I went to this mission trip and I helped with Blue Missions and I helped in DR, but then just leave it as a thing in the past and that you're not doing anything with that. So it's kind of like the so what test. Like, okay, does this really matter? Does this have meaning? And then with that, so you see, like, well, what I was thinking is, if we could do just a breakout drill, I'm gonna shorten the time because I think it's like so useful that we're all together as well. So if we can just like write down, we can do it here, like write down 3 life moments that changed your perspective or revealed your characters. And then, so just think about things that are important, and then just share with your pair one moment and what does this happen? What did you learn about this? And then we can, I can give you some insight on this. So I'm just going to give you a few minutes and then we'll be back. Okay, if we could come back, and then with that, we'll regroup. Okay, so what we're like debriefing on insights. Is there anybody that would like to share any observations, reflections, ideas? What do you think? So one thing that I wanted to, sorry, that's like a goal, by the way. So when we're talking about life moments, we really want to see like, okay, how does that reveal our character? So we don't always just want to think about like, oh, well, they really like that about us, but it's more about like, okay, why does this matter to us? So I'm going to give you some examples so that with that you can see what I'm talking about. I'm a book hoarder. I have so many books I love to read. But I think that type of topic, I don't think, I kind of feel like maybe a college admissions counselor might be like, is this even true, or why does this matter type of component. So, but if we think about like other types of stories, other like life moments that really change our perspectives or really shed light on who we are, that could be even more interesting. And just like the ice analogy when I went to Starbucks. And then with that, what I wanted to kind of and what I feel is like if we can do this together, it's like crafting a narrative. Like if we can think of like structures that really work well. Remember, you want to have the reader engaged at all times. So you want to have like a good anecdote, like an attention grabbing statement, a hook. It could be a reflection, then growth, and or it could be like before, then turning point, and after, kind of like a movie. Or it could be a slice of life. Like you don't want to say like, oh, when I grew up, I did this and so on and so forth, but you want it to show kind of like, okay, what is the situation? Why is this person talking about this? It could be, I want to show you like a sample idea that I worked with a student that it was about like, and you see how we can incorporate like cultural components. So what that means is, well, this actually happened to my son as well. That's why we were brainstorming it. So my son lost his tooth lately, and I have his Hispanic background, and I know this sounds crazy, but growing up in Venezuela, we had El Ratón Pérez. So you have like this mouse that comes surreptitiously into your room and exchanges the money. But in the United States, and I'm actually talking so that nobody can hear me, in my household, in the US, we have something so much nicer. We have a tooth fairy, right? So you can think about like a beautiful, like perfect Tinkerbell type of thing that will like magically exchange the tooth for the money. I don't know how I wasn't traumatized with like a rat coming into my room at night, but I don't know. So you see, like one example is like we could say like how El Ratón Pérez met the tooth fairy. Because there will come a time, like my son, I live in the US, and I try to have like my kids' upbringing that it's very multicultural. So he lost his tooth on Saturday. I'm like, oh, El Ratón Pérez is coming. But I'm sure today when he went to school, they're like, oh, did the tooth fairy come? And then I need to learn how to parent better. I need to reflect on that. But you see how, like, if somebody were to write an essay on that, it's like, okay, how this rat met this fairy. Maybe what kind of conversation would they have, or what? And then you talk about your life there. So try to think about like a possible opening hook for your essay where the person might be like, wait, what is she talking about? A rat and a fairy? And I want to learn more. And then you see with that, like, you're not just talking about something random, you're talking about something about your life there as well. If you can reflect on that, and I just wanted to open this like a Q&A if there are any additional questions. If anybody wants to raise their hands, what do you think? And then I'm just gonna check it. Yes, Aradhana, if I pronounce it
Hi.
correctly, you can click.
Yeah,
Hi.
that was actually really good. Thank you. Thank you so much for your
Thank you.
time today. I really appreciated your session. The
Thanks.
question I had was, as I started like writing my rough draft, I have all of these ideas, all of these things that I want to incorporate. I have this clear image of what I want it to look like, but when it comes to actually writing it, it's like I'm blanking. Like I have so many things I want to write about, and it's like I can't keep my tone consistent, and it's just confusing how I'm supposed to tie everything together. Like I know the format that I was told to write in was like describe the incident, what you learned from it, how you apply it today and how you plan to apply it in the future. Like that was the kind of format that I was given to write my essay, like base it off. And I'm just really struggling. I was wondering if you had any advice to overcome this.
Okay, so what you say is very normal, it's very valid. So what I recommend here is if you could maybe choose one of the topics that you're thinking about. You might get to the point that you're like, oh, after 2 paragraphs or after 300 words, you might be like, okay, I'm done writing about this. And then maybe you can weave that into with another type of topic, but then don't overdo it. Like you don't want to weave in 6 different types of topics because it's what you're telling me, then it's going to be hard to connect it. So you could talk about different topics, less is more, as long as they're connected, that they are correlated, that you're not just going to talk about. So you see like the example that I gave in the beginning when I'm talking about like diversity, but then neurodiversity. And I tied that in because I'm talking about like sitting at the dinner table, but then if my son says a word, it's going to be like, wow, okay, that's one of like my life missions and one of my life ambitions because that's something that's important. Um, okay, sushi. Did I pronounce
Yeah,
it correctly?
yeah. So like my question is kind of what we were talking about recently. Is it like fine to kind of like structure, I guess, your essay not in like a specific event, but kind of like an ongoing like theme or something you've like noticed like or like dealing with like your entire life, kind of.
So, okay, so yeah, you could definitely. So, can you give me a little bit more of an example regarding that, please?
So I'm planning to like major in like psychology, and like I know your essay doesn't necessarily have to connect to your major, but like I was thinking about like because I'm like South Asian, it's kind of like mental health is kind of like a stigmatized like topic in like my community. So I was thinking of writing about how like I guess because of like that stigma, how that's like negatively affected like access to like resources, like my friends and family, and how that's like kind of other implications and stuff, and like why I want to kind of advocate like towards like changing that.
Yes, absolutely. I think you can definitely tie that in and it doesn't feel forced. I'm going to give you an example. Yeah, I saw a reel about this the other day, a story. I was just like, I can totally. So I saw this on Instagram, like how Hispanics deal with mental health. That if somebody says like I'm bored, I'm sad, and the mom says like go clean, go mop, and then everything will go away. And the other day, my son tells me that he's bored. I'm like, why don't you just what? There's plenty of things to do in the house. Go back in the house. I was like, oh my god, this is a stigma. And then the importance of mental health and like talking about feelings. So you can definitely try to like think of an anecdote like that, so we can elaborate on that. What about you, Leonardo?
So I had a question regarding, as I previously said, my essay starts on an anecdote, and I know you also said starting it off with the hook that kind of keeps the reader engaged, keeps them wanting to keep reading it, but I feel
Mhm.
like it's much easier to start off with the hook when you're talking about a specific topic, but I feel
Yeah.
like it's harder when you're talking about a story. Like for example, my essay starts with my father's latest acquisition, a copy of Mario Kart Wii. So I'm getting very straight to the point, but at the same
Mhm.
time, I don't know if like what like how if I do want to include a hook, how do I do that with an anecdote?
So I would do this with a hook, something that and try to, if you can, if possible, make this about you. So what I mean with that is, I had to revert to toothpaste, or all I could think about was toothpaste. And then because I remember you mentioned about like using toothpaste to fix the CD or whatever it was. So you
Hmm.
see how here you're talking about problem solving and you're making it like the attention grabbing statement about yourself. So, and that's
Okay.
like a mini anecdote that's part of the story, but it's about you. So it
Okay,
doesn't
cool.
begin with your father, but it's more like all I could think about was toothpaste, or my only answer would be toothpaste or Colgate or whatever. That's why.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. How about you, James?
Yeah, so I had a question about something you said earlier, which was like you don't want just like a resume review basically. And
Mhm.
my essay I don't think does that, but it does have like it's like the way I explain my growth is like through
Mhm.
three extracurriculars that I did and how like those was like I engaged with the world and then I engaged with my community and then I engaged with this.
Mhm.
So but it does talk about three of my extracurriculars. In that case, should I just instead of describing what I did, maybe just give like an anecdote of each one or something?
I would, correct. Yes.
How specific should that be? Because like I have a very like I have a story for one of them, but for the others, it's
Mhm.
like I don't have like one moment where I can just laser in on. Like what about
Okay.
them?
I would try to be as specific as possible. Like you don't have to give an example of each one, but like try to hone in a club, maybe econ, something where you're having like that aha moment. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Okay, we're gonna do K and then Musfira and then we'll wrap it up. What about you, Kay?
Okay. Hi. First of all, I want to say that I like my first language wasn't English, and
Mhm.
I like in the future I wanted to attend medical school and possibly work on being like a doctor. So when I was like younger, I had an experience where the doctor that was like my physician at the time, she like came in the room speaking Mandarin with me, and I was really shocked at that and made me feel really connected with the doctor, which I've never felt that connection. I want to like work on connecting that with like in the future, like me making connections with my patients. I don't know how to go on with that topic, so I'm kind of confused on what to do.
Okay, so what I would do is like try to incorporate like the show don't tell component to kind of like relay more about like, so what's an example that you don't want to talk about here?
Pardon?
Well, what's like an anecdote or an example that you'd want to showcase here, just so that to see if I could visualize this.
That I want to show like about myself, right?
Yeah, correct.
I kind of want to like maybe about like it's about like making connections with people that she was able to connect with me, and that kind of connection is what I want for like for
Yeah.
me in the future. I'm not sure how to go on it, but yeah, it's one of like ideas that I'm not really sure about. That's why.
Okay. So I would like it. So you see how you're talking about like your central theme would be about like making connections. So what is a
Mhm.
specific connection, or what's a specific conversation or something where like you're uniting two people together?
Probably like language, I'd say, like the connection
Yeah.
of language. Yeah, I was
All
thinking
right.
about that. And also like yeah, connection of like language, I'd say.
Yeah, I think that could be useful. And then you see like you could use even like a word or a phrase and then in parentheses do
Mhm.
a translation. And
Okay.
last one, Miss Fira.
Hi, thank you for the session. So
Yeah.
my question was, so I think like an event that's like really affected my life is like, I guess I move a lot. Like I've lived in like 4 countries, and like in the US alone, like I've lived in 3 different states. And obviously like I have to like switch schools, switch friends. And I was like thinking about like kind of writing about that in my essay and showing like how I kind of overcame that challenge. And I don't know if it would be like useful to maybe relate that to my major, which is neuroscience. So like how would I maybe go about that?
Okay, so maybe if you could include like little specific anecdotes where you really are kind of like showcasing the importance of you, basically it's like the importance of you like showcasing like the importance of how you've lived in these different types of countries. Maybe it's eating patterns, maybe it's like customs that you really, and then with that like you're making connections. That way you're not just saying like, oh, I lived here, I did this, I did that, but maybe like the importance of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So like I would talk about like
Okay.
a single country and like go into more like detail, like
You
show.
could.
Okay.
You could. Correct. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I loved all these ideas. This is wonderful. It was wonderful talking to all of you. Have a good evening.